All right. You are here with me, Jermaine Jackson, as I am beginning this interview series, and it is about celebrating those that exemplify excellence. When we look at the word excellence, it is simply the quality of being outstanding or extremely good. It is those people that in some of their professional fields, they may be the very best, those that are being a positive influence on others, lifting others up, and being a positive influence in our communities. And today, my guest is attorney Mario A. Reed. Now, many of you may have seen him on Facebook. You have seen his posts, what he is talking about in the community, but many may not know it. This is somebody I have known for 41 years of my life. There's only a 3 month difference in between us. If you have ever seen the very unique home that is on the corner of North Orchard Drive and Lincoln Highway, this is a product of that household. To give you a little historical content, our mothers, missionary Beverly Reed and my mother, may she rest in peace, missionary Esther Jackson Smith, were born on the same day. They met and considered themselves to be sisters. It was just something that was bonded between them. And so, therefore, all of their children, her five and sisters Reed nine, they became cousins. So we became family. And if you look back in history, the Jackson and Reed had some historical moments, great barbecues and picnics in the summer. So this interview is not only a friend, but I consider them family. I know his family very well. Many times in the back of that house that has been called the Chinese house, it has been called a restaurant. I've heard so many different things over the years, but his father, Elder Mark Reed, who is a retired civil engineer, designed that house himself. So even that is an excellent work that he did. So many times growing up, playing basketball in the rocks, baseball in the backyard, across the field, football games. So a lot of time spent together over the years in the basement, battling out in video games, all type of stuff like that. And Mr. Attorney Mario Reed, he is, if I get this right, number 5 out of the 9. I think I got that right. Yes. So he is the middle child. And if anybody knows anything about middle children, a lot of people say middle kids got problems. But what I've learned is that middle children are very unique. They're very special. They have different gifts and talents sometimes that just shine brightly. So I would like to introduce to some and present to others attorney Mario A. Reed. Thank you, sir, for taking the time to be a part of this interview.
Thanks so much for the invitation and for having me.
All right. So a lot of people know you. Mr. Reed has his own law firm for estate planning. He's an estate planning attorney. And I know I've known a lot about your journey, what you went through in school and stuff. And a lot of people, I took some time to read the reviews from your law firm. Wonderful reviews about so many people you've helped. If you've ever seen his post on Facebook and the stories he tells, the things that he has helped people get out of when they didn't have any other help, when they didn't have any other options, and what he has done. And so, looking at you now, being a lawyer, having your own practice, one of the first questions that I want to ask you is, was that your first career choice when you do certain things, careers as a kid, you think back like me, I wanted to be a doctor. Went to college, but I wanted no parts of medical school. So my career choice changed very quickly because I couldn't do 4 more years of school. So at what point, like, was that your first career choice to become a lawyer?
No, it was not my first, second, or third career choice. It was not until I had returned to Columbia in 2006 that it even became something that I considered. My first career choice was to be a cartoonist. So, one of the things you're aware of, but not as many people are aware of, is growing up, I loved to draw. I would draw all the time in church, in school, any opportunity I was drawing. And I really loved drawing. It was a passion of mine. And my first career choice was I wanted to be a cartoonist. So that's what it was that I was hoping for. And then Elder Mark Reed Sr., as you mentioned, he was what I like to refer to as a very effective at dream killing. So he shared an article about a cartoonist who was in the local area from the Star newspaper. And that cartoonist was living on cereal and soup. And my father had me read this article when I was 12. and it pretty much crushed my dream about becoming a cartoonist because I didn't want to live off cereal and soup. So that was the first career choice that got smashed. And then my next career choice was I wanted to be a journalist, like my eldest sister, Marcia Reed Woodard, who at the time wrote for Black Enterprise, Indigo, and several other publications. And I pursued that, went to Columbia College and got my bachelor's degree in that. But when I was at Columbia College, that's where I was introduced to the idea of becoming an attorney. And I set out at that moment to become an attorney and pursued it at that point.
Okay, wow. So great. So left the cartoonist alone, and then from journalist to the attorney. Now, I know you went to Columbia, and I know you went and got your law degree, but I believe that your college started back at Quincy University. So, what was the transition from going to high school to Quincy? Because some people may not know this. Attorney Reed is very athletic. If you haven't ever played any sports with him, like I said, my goal is to try to bring some things out that people may not know. Growing up with him, I always thought people like him, certain other friends we had, were great athletes, had all the potential, just naturally gifted. He could do any sport: baseball, basketball, football. But many people may not know he was a very hard worker. I never seen a teenager work so hard. I think one of his first jobs was at GFS. And so very independent, worked, got his own car and stuff. But a lot of people always wonder, why did you not stick to the sports or the teams? Because a lot of people felt, I don't know, I especially felt growing up as a friend that, man, this guy could have probably went to school and balled and stuff. And even to this age now, like I said, we've known each other for 41 years, still see him out there playing volleyball. We're going to get into more about that and with his supporting his daughter. Sometimes he motivates me. I'm literally getting back in the gym next week because I'm tired of just sitting on the sideline. When you look back at your kind of like high school with all the athleticism and things like that, do you ever regret not taking that route, or do you feel that that was not even an option for you?
So I don't regret not taking that route because at that time, I hated not having nice stuff. And that was really my motivating factor. So the reason why I gave up sports in my junior year of high school. So I played football, ran track, and loved basketball. Played that, thought I could have played in high school and definitely in college. But at the time, all of that was secondary to the fact I wanted nice stuff. I wanted nice clothes. I wanted a car. I wanted to be able to buy myself lunch. I wanted to be able to get a haircut. And growing up with five brothers and three sisters, I won't go as far as to say that we were impoverished, but I like to refer to we grew up poor. So I was wearing my brother's hand-me-downs, and I didn't have name brand anything. And at the time, I just was so tired of getting bullied. So we grew up in an era where bullying was it was almost a badge of honor. Not today's society where bullying will get kids removed. Bullying would get kids promoted in class as the kind of the shining stars. So I was tired of enduring that and living that lifestyle. And I really wanted to have my own. And I didn't think that I was going to make it professionally. Now, could I have made it where I got a scholarship? That's a possibility. But at the time, I knew I wanted to have my own stuff. I grew up never having my own stuff. And that was a bigger goal for me. Retrospectively looking back, I would have liked to have known, could I have competed at the collegiate level? But I'm very grateful and thankful that I picked up on that work ethic and had an opportunity to get my own car at a very young age. I was working 45 hours a week as a senior in high school and was still able to get straight A's at that time. So I'm grateful that I learned how to have time management, because even if I did go to college on a college scholarship, I wasn't going pro in probably any sport. So I was able to kind of turn the corner and start the focus of, I'm going to be a professional in some other area other than sports. And I'm just glad that now I can still compete with people half my age who would never think that I'm what age I am. So I'm grateful that I can still compete, but I don't regret it because I was able to learn a very valuable skill of time management and being able to juggle lots of things. And that has served me far better than going to college to play volleyball, basketball, run track, or anything probably would have.
Okay. So now, as you said, senior, 45 hours a week. And now, and basically, say when you're in high school, so I have a child that works. They're not supposed to do over 20 hours. Technically, we know some kids do it based off their circumstances. So you're working 45 hours a week, straight A student, still going to school. Even though you hadn't did that, that's still a lot to go on. And then you graduate in '99. You're on your way to Quincy University, independent. You get your first car. What type of things did you face even at 18? And yet to handle all of that, yes, time management, of course you had to mature at a faster rate because you had to be so responsible. But when it seems like you transferred and you got the time to go to Quincy University, how much of that was really just all of you? Like maybe you didn't have resources of help. How much of that do you look back on and realize it was just you that did it? Or did you have some assistance that people may not know about? Or was it really just you making the decision, I'm going to college, and then just putting forth the effort to do it on your own?
Yeah, so I would say that it was about 95% me, in so much where, so I was 17 as a senior. So my birthday is October 29th, and I was right at the cutoff. So that was the last year where people who were born and turned 17 or 18 after the school year started were allowed to still be a part of that class. So you were actually the cutoff because you were born in February and you were a class below exclusively because you didn't turn that age in that calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
So I was always younger than a lot of my classmates. Now, of course, it was by a couple months, but so having that understanding of growing up was always a big part of what the educational process was. In terms of going to school, I didn't know that I wanted to go to college until probably the first part of the senior year. In our community, there wasn't really much talk about, hey, colleges, where there might be a college fair, but nobody in class was going to that. It was kind of like that was something just happening. So within the culture, there just wasn't a lot of talk and buzz about going to college. My two eldest sisters at the time, they had went away to college, but my older brother hadn't went to college. My older sister, she went to the Navy. So I didn't have anybody really in my circle who at the time was going to college. The guys who I grew up with and at school and at church, it wasn't like we were sitting down comparing college decisions and college letters. So it wasn't until the beginning of the senior year that I was like, hey, I got to figure out what comes next. And at that point, it was pretty much who was interested in me. So the reason why I chose Quincy University is because the father on Frazier, and I forget what his name is, but he went to Quincy University, and I know that it was a stock standard letter, but it said Mario and it was addressed to me. And I felt like he was asking me to come to Quincy University. And I said, if the father of Frazier wants me to go here, then this is where I need to go. So that's what prompted for me to even consider Quincy. And then at the time, I had no clue. I did not know about FAFSA, financial aid forms. I didn't know about ACTs. I didn't know about SATs. I didn't know about any of those. And the only reason why it is that I even received that letter is because only by a recommendation of a teacher at in high school, Adrian Frana, he recommended I should take the PSAT. So I took the PSAT, and it was the only reason I took it is because I was able to get out of class. So I took it because I wanted to get out of class because I hadn't done the homework. So I was like, yeah, I'll do the PSAT. So I take this PSAT, and I do incredibly well on it, as I always did well on tests. I didn't have the discipline or the study habits to do well in terms of homework early on, but I could do well on tests because I can remember a lot of stuff, great memory. So I take this PSAT, I do well, and then that information gets to Quincy. Quincy puts up the father of Frazier to send the letter. I get the letter. I say, that's where I need to be. They want me. I want them. I want to go away to school because I wanted to get out on my own. And that was pretty much how that started. And I remember my father drove me down to Quincy for the orientation, and it was an experience like no other. All these young kids sitting on the lawn of the school, and I'm like, what is this? This is nothing like what I knew high school to be. So I said, hey, this is where I want to be. And then from there, I handled the application, and I didn't have any money to go to school because I hadn't been saving, I hadn't been preparing. So I was able to basically guilt trip and convince my father to co-sign on a student loan for me. And he told me as long as I go through the process of applying for all of the student aid and meeting with the bursar and everything like that, I could stay. And after spending 2 weeks of nonstop just sitting outside of the bursar's office and being the first one there every day so I could get all the applications in, then I continued. So I'd say it was about 95% myself. My father, he co-signed, so I got to give him credit for that. But aside from that, it was just wanting something different. I did not want to just be back at home and working at whatever type of job it might have been. While I was happy to have been making that money, I knew that it wasn't going to be the kind of income that I wanted to have and the lifestyle that I wanted to lead. So it was just a desire to want more and just really to have nicer stuff.
Okay. So let's stay right there for a minute, because before we transition to the next phase, because so you were kind of my first part, like you said, we grew up in the same areas, same situations in a sense. And before you, like me, none of my older siblings, I found out later in life they went to college. But with the gap of years we had, I didn't really know nothing about. Like I found out later in life, my oldest brother got a track scholarship to Chicago State, ran for 2 years, but just gave it up because he didn't like school. Never
Wow.
knew that as a little kid. I knew my brother right before me. My sister had took some culinary classes. That's why she could cook so well. I didn't know that. So when it came to looking at somebody that went to college, as a family, as a friend, you were the first one that I knew. And we used to talk and stuff about you being in Quincy. Kind of went through the same thing as you. When I got ready my senior year, didn't really know. Had the grades, didn't have, I had money saved up, but not enough to go to school. My mother set me down and she was like, if you want to go, so like you said, I went to a college fair just at Perry State. Nobody told me about it. I took the ACT, got a 19 both times. My mother put me in the class. I felt it did nothing for me because I got the same score. Blackburn College, because of my GPA, this guy was there. May he rest in peace. His name was Sam Boucher. He said, man, you got a 3.75 GPA. I can get you in school. Had me fill out the forms, took all that to my mother. My mother was a registered nurse, but she said, what I love about my mom, she was so honest. She said, son, I've never went away to school. I did something locally. I'm a nurse. I don't know how to help you with this. And at that point, I had to kind of grow up and take control of my life. And me and my mother went through that process together, the applications, the FAFSA. Thankfully, I was blessed with an academic scholarship to go to Blackburn, financial aid and grants and all that stuff. Was fortunate. But later on in life, I started to look at some of the people we grew up around, grown-ups and stuff. Found out, unfortunately, at some of their funerals that we were around people that had masters, doctorates, degrees. But as you said, this stuff was never talked about around us. So I went through a little phase of resentment. Like, why? How do you be around these type of people with all of this information that can give you access to this to help you go further in life, and it's totally just not given to you? Now, I've since got over it, and then, of course, as I know you have a daughter, I have children, I have a daughter that's in college right now. I'm so versed in helping her in college. The paperwork, even though it's been what's going on 19 years since I graduated from school, but there's no way I'm not going to give my kids the information I got. Even if it doesn't come from me, it comes from other. I put them around people. Have you ever, like, later on in your life when you realize this person had this degree, this person had this information, I was right there in front of them. Why did they never give it to me? Why did they never say anything? Why did they not even introduce this information? Because as you said, during that time, I would say even at church, at school, even in the home, nobody was talking about this stuff. So if we went, we were really like kind of going out there blind, trying to figure it out. But then later on, you look back and like, wait a minute, this person went to school. Why did you not give me any of this information?
Yeah, so that's a great kind of insight and perspective, and I lived through that similarly as well. But what I've realized and noticed, I'd say after I graduated from law school is that people don't necessarily have a mindset for sharing. And
Mm.
that is across the board, all professions, all walks of life, all socioeconomic statuses. People don't inherently share. And it took me a while to come to grips with that because my personality is I want to share everything. If I learn something, I want to tell everybody. I've always been that way since a little boy. If I learn something, I wanted everybody to know because if I got excited about it, I said I want everybody else to be excited about that. So for me, it was trying to understand why isn't everybody this way? But for the majority of people, once they learn something, they feel like it was important for them to learn, but it's not important for them to pay it forward or share it, not because they don't want to help, but because they just naturally aren't sharers. And our society really kind of helps cultivate a mindset of that. We're told not to talk to strangers. We're told not to talk about growing up in church. We were constantly told, don't talk about your personal business. Don't talk about this. So it was this idea that we're not supposed to be sharing anything other than whatever sanction. If we're in church, we talk about the Bible. If we're in school, we talk about academia, the classroom, the books. We don't talk about life. We don't talk about these social skills and these soft skills that are so imperative to help us navigate. So initially I had that feeling of sentiment, but once I graduated from law school and really began to work in a lot of different environments, I came to the realization people just aren't sharers. People don't inherently and naturally share whatever it is. So unless we as young people would have engaged them, which is just fundamentally flawed to think that that's going to happen, they weren't going to share it. And that's a big part of what I strive to use my platform for. Whatever it is that I learn and I know, I want for everybody to learn about it. And it's because I understand that the reason why I find myself getting these phone calls and having these conversations with people is because it's not being shared. So at a very young age, I said, if I have a child, and when I did have a child, I wanted to share things that growing up, I always said, how come I didn't know about? So that's why it's such a major emphasis. And while I wish that we would have gotten a lot of the education, I'm really a big believer of whatever it is that I didn't like, now it's up to me to make a change and say, I'm not going to accept that. So, yeah, it would have been ideal for everybody who was in our circles, whether it be at Rich, whether it be at Portland Street, whether it been just in our local communities of Chicago Heights and Park Forest, to say, hey, we're going to truly take to heart this idea that it takes a village to raise a child. But now it's up to us. So it's up to Jermane Jackson, it's up to Mario Reed to say, I'm going to move this thing forward. And I'm not just going to share it with my children exclusively, but I'm going to share it with any and everyone I get the opportunity to. So it really is now kind of the rally cry. And it's up to us to say, we're not going to let the next generation come back and have that same statement because we refused to make a change in what happened.
Right. Very. And I like the way you said that, that just not even limited it to our children, to anybody we can share the information. And I think that's one of the biggest things about your mark. And I'm glad that you took that because I didn't take that at first. I dealt with a lot of resentment because later on in life, when I did encounter people that were able to give me information about, so I'm talking about even after I got out of school, the people that gave me information about credit, budgeting, finances, investments, all that stuff. And to know people I was around for years that had that information but never released it, it made me. Now it took me a while to get past it because I realized it was limiting me in my own life. I said, am I going to sit around and carry this resentment about what I didn't have, or take what I have now and utilize it? And that's what I'm learning to do. And like you said, not only sharing that with my children, anybody that encounters me that I can help. That's one of my flights and things to do in life. And truly, with your law firm, you share a lot and to help others. But we know initially you didn't come out of law school a entrepreneur owning your own practice. I believe you used to work for the Cook County's assessor's office, if I'm correct.
Recorder of Deeds office.
Recorder of Deeds office.
Mhm.
So you worked for them for some years, and you make this decision. I know you've posted some things on Facebook about why you made that decision to step out into entrepreneurship. When you were contemplating that decision and then you actually did it, because I think some people would look at you and be like, man, this guy just did it. He's a success. Did you ever have any times where you were just scared out of your mind, scared that you were going to fail? Were there ever times as you were kind of transitioning from the recorded deeds to entrepreneurship where some stuff just didn't work out? You was like, you know what? Maybe I should just go back to my 9 to 5 because this whole entrepreneurship it's just too rough. It seemed like I might just kind of talk to us about that. Because if people, like I said, I've seen you post things and kind of touch on your story, but people may not really know, because I know it's a lot of people that, like I personally know a lot of people that want to step out and do businesses, entrepreneurship. Like even this, what we're doing now, this was very scary for me. I don't mind broadcasting myself, but to interview other people. And one thing somebody told me, they said, Jermaine, you got to have a better presentation. You got to get a format. You got to learn this and that. But one thing I've learned recently, you got to invest in yourself. So I had to get the headphones, the microphone. I'm working on getting a different laptop and stuff. And I said, in order sometimes to just have the right presentation, you have to invest in yourself. But it was very scary because you don't know if it's going to work, if it's going to appeal to people. And so for you, who I consider to be a successful entrepreneur, but in that transitional stage, was there any fear? Did you make mistakes? Was there ever times you said, you know what, this ain't going to work. I'm just going to go back to the 9 to 5.
Yeah. So I think everyone has a bit of self-doubt. I don't think that there's any person or human being which just doesn't have self-doubt. And it's because if you do, then those are usually the people who are going to fail. If you just overwhelmingly think I'm going to succeed at this and there's no way I can fail, that's kind of like the Titanic. So the Titanic was the ship which was unsinkable and it sunk. In my situation, it was a lot different than most entrepreneurs. So the law, as it pertains to entrepreneurship, is a lot different than every other aspect. One of the things that I was just mentioning to one of the students at Hillcrest, I spoke at the high school, Hillcrest High School, on last week, and one of the young men came up and asked me, and he said, hey, it must be tough running your own law firm. And I explained to him, it's not really that tough in terms of what most businesses look at. Most businesses, the number one challenge is, how am I going to attract clients? How am I going to find people to come to me? Whereas as an attorney, I don't have that issue, because people, it's very similar to being a doctor in so much people are always going to get sick. People are always going to have a legal need. And because of that, my biggest concern wasn't how am I going to survive in terms of this. My biggest concern was understanding a lot of those other things, which I had never had to think about. I had never had to worry about paying taxes for myself. I had never had to worry about where's my insurance going to come from, because it was always through the company. I had never had to understand about figuring out payroll. I had never had to understand about figuring out retirement plans, all of those different things. But in terms of the question of was there self-doubt, the self-doubt or the kind of the hesitation or consternation lasted for probably a month. And it was more so a case of, again, I don't know how to take care of my own taxes. I don't know how to take care of my own health care. So the comfort level was really with those other things as opposed to, am I going to make it? Now, it's funny because I've had people come up to me and tell me, and very close friends say that they were nervous and concerned about me. And they were like, whoa, what are you doing? As I had never worked in an entrepreneurial role. I'd had separate businesses, but I had always worked a job since age 16 at Gordon Food Service Marketplace through age 38. All of the time, I always had a job. And so it was a case where I never went down that path. But one of the things that really made me feel comfortable about it was the very next day after I decided to leave from the clerk's office, I got a phone call from someone who said, we need your assistance. And I didn't know how much you're supposed to charge for legal services. I didn't know what any of this looked like. And I just made up a number. And it was a number that I just knew there was no way this person was going to say yes. It was such an astronomically large number. I'm sure they're going to be like, nah, sorry, I can't do it. But when that person said, yes, we'll love to take advantage, and when can we set up an appointment? It was in that very moment that I said, this may very well just work, because it was more money than I would have made for all of the last month while
Wow.
working at the clerk's office. And I left the clerk's office making over $100,000. So I was not like I was working minimum wage. I was making a six-figure salary at the clerk's office, and the client, who I knew I didn't market, she didn't even know I had left the clerk's office. So it was literally a whim that she reaches out. And then I give this figure that was more than 1 month's salary. And she says, yes, when can we get started? And it was in that moment that I said, okay, you know what? This is going to possibly work. So it's very different than a lot of other entrepreneurial endeavors. People need me, not the other way around in a lot of scenarios. So because of that, I don't necessarily have to worry about a lot of the business things that most entrepreneurs do, which is how am I going to attract people? I have to worry about how am I going to manage all of this? How am I going to be able to live? How am I going to be able to take a Saturday off to be able to go and see my daughter play volleyball? So that's really the biggest thing. But one thing I would say to any entrepreneur is, don't feel as if though you have to leave your job to really start that process. So in today's society, you can work a 9 to 5 and then have your entrepreneurial endeavor from 5 to 9, 5 to 10. And the better you get at it, the better at which point you're going to be. And then the last thing that you mentioned, where it was you have to invest in yourself, I would kind of take a step back from that and say you just have to commit to it. And it doesn't have to be with an investment. So it's really just saying, I want this. And those two kind of go hand in hand. But even if you don't get the microphone, even if you don't get the better laptop, as long as you say, I'm all in on this, you're going to see success that comes from it. Now, eventually, you're going to need to invest and grow it, because the business or the interest, it's going to peak so fast. I had to get an office because working off of my dining room table wasn't working anymore. It wasn't that I necessarily wanted to invest. I wasn't given a choice, because as the files kept stacking up, there wasn't enough space. And once you've committed, oftentimes you're not going to have a choice but to keep up with what happens. But even before, one of the things I see with a lot of entrepreneurs is they want to go out and they want to get the office space. They want to go out and they want to do the branding. They want to buy a billboard, and they don't have a single customer. And it's like, why are you doing all of this? Go ahead and commit to it. And once you commit to it, oftentimes you're going to see the success. So even before you invest in yourself, I would say make the commitment. And then once you make the commitment, usually that investment is going to be, you won't have a choice.
Great. Thank you for that tip. So that's something for me to write down to as I continue this journey, which I'm definitely am committed to. And so thank you for that, for all the ones that are listening for that. And so if you talk about your business growing, so you started dining room table, you have the office. Eventually you had staff members and different people. So of course, I know you were one of the entrepreneurs that you went through the pandemic. A lot of businesses were hit with different challenges and stuff like that. I know recently you posted something on Facebook about the law group, your law firm, and you showed all your staff members. Talk about that just through the years. I don't know how you were exactly affected by the pandemic. Has there ever been a struggle for you to get staff members? As the head of what you're doing, have you ever been faced with the thing of where you had to fire somebody because they weren't working up to par? Because I know on my job as a manager, I work for Illinois Action for Children. My team never heard about discipline. I got people that's been there fired. I just hired new people. But I started looking at some of their work and I introduced what discipline is. And I said, if you all don't get your work up to par, some of y'all going to face discipline. And many, well, we never faced that. But I'm like, looking at y'all work over the years and based off the expectancy of this corporation, some of you all haven't met it. Nothing against the former manager who's there before me, but I'm like, you can't continue to perform like this and say you're successful in this and it doesn't meet the requirements of the job. So kind of now people are doing a whole lot better, but they was like, man, this guy's serious, because Yeah, because if we don't do well, guess whose fault it is? It's on me. And I'm
Absolutely.
not finna jeopardize the company or my position for you. So now you're as an entrepreneur, you went through the pandemic, hiring people, had to fire people. How is it like dealing with those different challenges and still trying to run a successful business?
Yeah, the pandemic didn't have as big of an impact on the firm as it did for a lot of other industries and companies. So thankfully, the legal sector was considered to be a necessary, um, required worker. So we never stopped going into the office throughout. A lot of other firms did, and it was because they were taking advantage of the opportunity. They're like, hey, here's a chance to not go into the office. So we're going to do that. So, as somebody who came up with what I like always refer to as a hustler's mentality, we never for a second thought I'm not going to go to work. Early on, a lot of clients were a little bit tentative, but oftentimes they would say, hey, I know you guys may not be in the office, but we'd like to come into the office. And we would always say, no, we're in the office, so we're good. So the pandemic didn't impact us in terms of a business in the same way that it did a lot of other places, because we were always open, we were always seeing clients. We never stopped. There was no break or time. Even when the stay-at-home order went into place, we already had clients scheduled to come in. So they just came on in, and then we just agreed to not have multiple clients in the office at a time. And that was pretty much it. Where it did impact us is that our business is so reliant on governmental agencies, whether it's the courts, whether it's the clerk's office. And that was a nightmare because those business or those governmental agencies took full advantage of it, and they pretty much shut everything down. So we had to change the way that we were interacting with these governmental agencies. Previously, I was going into the courtroom and we were having our cases heard the same day. That went away, so we had to switch to Zoom. Previously, I was going into the recorder's office and we were recording documents the same day. Now we had to mail them in or we had to e-file. So that slowed everything down. So how it impacted us is that the way we conducted business with other agencies changed, but very similar to anything that happens. So when the toll booths go from having somebody in the toll booth to doing open road tolling, they give you a certain period of time to transition, and then either you figure it out or you get those notices in the mail. That's really what it was for us in business. Was these other places are changing, so we just have to accommodate them. But for us, there was no real change. Now, in terms of hiring and firing or even hiring people, I've been very fortunate and blessed in so much that all of the people who work for the firm, they've called me. So it's very, again, very similar to clients. So our office manager, she happened to be the wife of one of my good friends, coworkers. And she called me on a Friday night and said, I need this job and tell me what I got to do and I'll do it. And then she showed up the following Monday to an outreach event at the Veterans Center in Chicago Heights. And she's been with me ever since. Hard worker, fantastic, does wonders for us. The associate attorney, friends, very close friends with someone we went to high school with, Jen Jackson. And Jen was just sharing the information that I posted on social media about estate planning and the importance of it in the community. And then she caught wind of it and she called and says, I want to work for you. And so much so, I said, well, I can't pay you. She said, I don't care. I just want to learn. So she worked for free for about the first 6 or 7 months. And she's been fantastic and just done a great job. And then our most recent hire, our legal admin, she worked for another attorney in Evergreen Park, and he died. And
Wow.
yeah, so he passed away at young age, wasn't even in his 60s. I think it was like 54, 55. So not a whole lot older than where we are, but he died. And there was no kind of backup plan or retirement plan. She was essentially his office manager. And when he died, that was it. There was no more work to be done. So she called and she wanted to find an attorney that was in her local community. And she called me up. And I picked up the phone and she froze for a good 10, 20 seconds because she said she's never heard of an attorney answering their own phone. So she was caught off guard because she was expecting to talk to another secretary. I said, nah, not how I get down. If I'm available, I'm gonna take the call. And she's been on ever since. So everybody who we've had has kind of reached out and contacted me, and thankfully they've worked out well. Now we have had other people, attorneys included, where they weren't working and kind of living up to the standard. And one of the things that you may mention to was the fact that you didn't want to misrepresent or have individuals misrepresenting the company in terms of their work ethic and their performance. Well, it becomes a whole nother level when it's your company. So the way you feel about them misrepresenting or not living up to the standards of the company, that's one thing, because it's not Jermane Jackson's company. When it literally has your name in the title, it takes on a whole nother level. But
Mm-hmm.
one of the best things that I'm sure yourself and any good leader or any quality leader can say, as long as you're modeling and demonstrating and representing what the expectations are, it's a lot easier for other people to follow and hold themselves to that standard. If they see that the person who is trying to hold them accountable is holding themselves accountable first and foremost, it makes it a lot easier. It's a lot easier for anybody to say, I'm going to do my best, because the person who's asking me to do my best is also doing it themselves and living up to that same standard. So although in the case of the attorney that we did have to let go, it was not really such a big issue or challenge, because again, she saw that the expectations were being lived up to by everybody else. So it was really an easy decision to say, I'm just not interested in working that hard. And usually a lot of people who have that sentiment, they don't mind being told it's, you got to find somewhere else, because when you don't necessarily jive with the culture, whether it's a bad culture or whether it's a good culture, it's not that tough or that hard for both parties to kind of part, because it's very evident. If everybody else is working hard and you're the only one who's not, usually you say, you know what, this is probably not the place for me, because they work too hard for my taste. And that's okay, because there's a place for everybody. So
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And I want to go back to the first part when you were talking about just the things you adjusted to, how the pandemic affect. I just think to all of our listeners out there, that's a big part about adaptation. You adapting to the change, which I find hard just for people in general. A lot of people, when they're faced with just a smaller challenge, want to adapt. So thank you for speaking to that, because I think that was just a great example of adapting. And with all that you do as a lawyer, and I've seen the videos where you say, you put in 14 hours. I'll be sitting there like, man, I ain't that dude, not yet. And I see it, but not only that, and I hope I pronounced this right. Is it Ardoma Housing?
mm-hmm. Yeah,
So, so not only you a lawyer, you're a father, you're a brother, uncle, all these things. Your business is yours. Like you said, your name is on it. That takes up enough of your time. Now we see the videos online. He's buying houses, updating them to like you don't even recognize what it was before you even got it. The vision to do that, the vision to add something else to your plate. And yes, I see the crews that you have. You have an amazing crew that rehab these houses for you, that update them, the things you put in the houses. That's even more work. So what inspired you to do that? And then secondly, the vision, because when I see you walk through some of these homes and what you transition them into, I think it's beautiful. I tell people all the time, I could see myself putting a crew together, but like you put the crew together, you organize the work, you do all that, but you also have the vision on what needs to go on the home. See, that's where I lack at. I don't even have the patience to do that. Like my wife, she sees that type of stuff. Me, it's just not my thing. And I could do that part where you like put the crew together, other stuff. I could do that because that's like, to me, that's like magic. But the vision, like when I see you, all right, guys, we're going to take this wall out, make this here. I see a shower. We're going to take this out. I'm looking like, how does he see this stuff? Like, it always amazes me when people can look at something and say, I could do this. I could change that. I could put this here. Why add that to your plate of what you already have going on? Is that something that you felt? Because I've seen people buy the houses, the communities you put them in. So that's impacting the community, is raising the value of the community. But you got enough on your plate already. Why add that to it? And then where does that vision, that insight come in to totally change a place and make it into what the ending product is?
So that's another great question. And it's kind of harkens back to what I mentioned earlier about the idea that a lot of entrepreneurs think that I have to stop my 9 to 5 and then go be an entrepreneur. Well, when I was still working at the Recorder of Deeds office, that 9 to 5, the Ardoma, which stands for Ariel, Dorothy, and Mario, we decided that we wanted to acquire properties and we wanted to improve communities. And some of it had to do with the fact we wanted to get money. So, like any good capitalist, we wanted to improve our financial situation. But another big part of it is that we always enjoyed interior design. And as you made reference at the beginning of it, I grew up in the Chinese House of Park Forest. So my entire childhood, I had saw interior design unlike any other interior design that I had ever came in contact with. So I had always seen rooms be transformed, but I was always fascinated with the idea. And it also stems to what kind of motivated me in high school to leave sports behind. I always wanted nicer stuff. I wanted nicer things. So all of those things mixed together really made for a great platform for me to start experimenting with this idea of rehabbing and home improvement. And it was all just really a passion and a love, and the idea that you can take something and improve upon it and everybody wins. Ideally, we'll win because we're going to earn more money from the sale, and that's going to help our financial situation. But the community wins because now there's this beautiful home that's in the community. And when you have a beautiful home, pride of ownership usually comes into play as well. So it's something which everybody wins, and I've always been a fan of. If possible, let's let everybody win it. Now, if we have to make some choices, I want to win over everybody else, but ideally, everybody can get a W if it works out well. So that's where it started from. And then just in terms of the progression, like with anything, the more you do it, ideally, the better you become at it. And in terms of the vision, I would challenge yourself. If you sat down and you walked the house and we went back to Dartmouth, you could come up with some ideas to say, you know what, this would look good. And it really stems from what would you want if this was yours? And that's the approach that we oftentimes take with designing of, if we were going to buy this house, what would we want? What kind of layout would we want? What kind of amenities and features? And that's really where that vision comes from, is you're looking at it through the lens of, if I had to come home to this every day, what do I want in this place? How do I want it set up? How do I want it laid out? And once you start looking at it through that lens, that vision becomes easy, because it's the same vision we live with every day of, well, what kind of car do you want? What kind of community? What kind of lifestyle do you want to have? What type of job environment do you want to have? And that's so much of what guides our vision. Everything that we have is because we've looked and said, this is what I envision for myself. And the more you do it, the easier and the better at it you're going to get, especially when you start to see some of these things come to fruition. So in the first project, when we're like, well, yeah, we're going to start small. But the more and more we see, we can up our ante and our taste, and it can still come to fruition. It just makes it so much easier. So then by the time project 7 or 8 comes along, it's like, yeah, we're doing this, and this, and it just becomes second nature. But you're always trying to up it a little bit. And the vision is really, what do you see what would you want? What kind of house would Jermane want to live in? What kind of house would Mario want to live in? And the more you do that, the better the vision is going to become, because you start to realize that my vision can become reality as long as I keep working.
Okay, great. So got a little bit of time left, and I want to hopefully hit 2 more points. We might jump back to the community and the visions. I got a question about that, but I want to jump to you as a father. Now, of course, we've seen the wonderful pictures, postings about you and your daughter, her sports, all of the amazing things you have taught her about the business and things like that. You set such a high standard for your daughter, and I believe a lot of us as parents, whatever our goals or dreams for our kids, we want to see our kids hopefully reach higher heights than us in whatever they do. I think me and you, with what we know now, we understand the importance of leaving an inheritance and a legacy for our children, our grandchildren. That there's more. Because I know with having two parents, I know both of your parents are still here, thankfully. Both of mine are deceased, and I wasn't left nothing, pictures and stuff. Nothing against them. I just believe when I look back on it, they just didn't have the knowledge on how to leave and do certain things. And I know about some of the struggles they went through just raising us, growing up in the type of communities and environments they were just scraping by just to survive every day. So, but I said, now that I know better, I have to do better. There's no excuse why I can't. So you set such a high standard for your daughter. And I guess my question is, one, I've seen you lay out some things about, I think even if, let's say your daughter didn't even want to go to school, you've laid out such a path for her where she could just almost join you right in business and you could teach her the ropes and she could do it. But when it comes to her in the future picking her own path, have you laid it out for her? Like, because some parents that have what you have with your business, they tell the kids, hey, you going to school to do the business. You don't have any other choices. Or are you that parent that's saying, whatever you choose, I'm teaching you this as an option. But at the end of the day, when you get past high school, it's your decision. Are you that parent that's be like, I'm going to support you in whatever? Or if she makes a decision that don't make sense to you at all, you can be like, listen, I can't support this. Where are you at as a parent when you've built something so foundational and impactful that your child could literally benefit off of, your children, your grandchildren? What if she just choose to go a whole different way? Are you that father that say, hey, okay, she didn't want this, I'm just going to support my daughter regardless?
So I'm definitely that father, and it's in large part because the one thing that I believe us as parents is that our goal is to help make our children's lives easier. And I'm not a big believer that my child has to exceed anything that I've accomplished, because that's not what my child's, in my opinion, purpose is. So I didn't bring them into this world to outdo me. That's never made a whole lot of sense to me. I brought them into this world to be the best them. And whatever the best them is, then that's on them. And my job as a parent is to help them become the best them. So one of the other days, she made the comment that she would just love to play volleyball, and she would love to play volleyball all the time. And I said, well, how are you going to get money? And she said, well, it's not about the money. And I said, but you got to live. And in that moment, it was such a proud moment for me, because she wasn't thinking about a lot of the things that I grew up thinking about, where how am I going to get this money? Like, that was the number one priority, is how am I going to get this money? How am I going to get this stuff? How am I going to better my life? She was exclusively thinking about what's going to bring me the highest amount of happiness. And that to me was a great feeling, because that's what I always wanted. So she was in a position of what I always dreamed about, where instead of making decisions because of the financial aspect or the economic aspect, she was making it based on what would bring her happiness. And that's what all of us as people should be doing. Had I have had more resources, more financial support, I know I would have made different decisions. I might have went and played sports in high school if I was able to have the financial things. So it was something that I always hoped for. And then in terms of just setting a standard, a lot of people kind of say that. I really dislike that word. I'm not setting a standard. I'm giving her what she needs to be the best her. And it's not a standard, because it's not as if though I'm expecting for anybody else, herself included, to come behind and say, this is what I have to do. It's, I'm alive right now, and I brought you into this world, so it's my responsibility to support you in every way, whether that be with financial resources, whether that be with emotional resources, whether that be with showing up and being at that game for support. And it's not a standard for anyone else, because you don't have any other fathers. You only have one father. So I'm not setting a standard, because there is no other father that's coming in and going to do it. What I'm doing is doing what, as a father, I'm supposed to do to help you be the best you. And whatever comes of it If you decide you want to go live in a van down by the river, then I'm going to make sure that you got the best van to live in down by the river. And this idea that what we grew up with is once you turn 18, you got to get out of this house and you got to move on. I don't subscribe to that because I don't really understand why. Why is 18 such a magical number? And why does this person have to leave from I'm a parent for the rest of their life. And if it means that I got to be supportive in so much where there's a place to live or, hey, you need a place to work or whatever that is, that's my job. And it's not a standard that I'm creating for her. It's a standard that I'm creating for myself. And it's because I made the decision to have this child. So it's my job to help them be the best child, 13-year-old, 18, 20, 21, and it never stops. So in terms of the standard, I really dislike that term because it's not a standard that I'm setting for anybody because there's nobody else coming in to live up to that or make good on it because it's just me. But what I am doing is holding myself to a standard in so much that if I brought this responsibility into the world, it's my responsibility to help that person be the best them, whatever that looks like. If she wants to go to college, if she wants to become a painter, if she wants to if she wants to sell tickets to the Bulls game outside of the state, whatever it is that she wants to do, I want to help her be the best in it because I want her to be the best her and find that happiness. Because as you know, this life is hard. It's very hard in so many ways. So whatever you can do to help somebody you love and care about find happiness, that's really what we should be here for, in my opinion. So that's that.
No, that's a great take on that. And what you said about the standard, because I've had that conversation with my son. He's 17, junior in high school. And one of the biggest questions he ever asked, he said, Dad, am I going to be this like you? Because I see you doing this and doing that. Dad, do I have to? I said, no, you don't have to be like me. Whatever I'm doing in my life is my choice. It's what drives me. It's what I said, you can be whatever you want to be in life. You know, he's a big sports guy. He loves football. He loves to draw. I said, son, you might be an artist. You might be a professional. I don't know what you're going to do. I said, my job is just to support you, you know. And he was like, well, Dad, when I turned 18, and I said, 18, I'm not saying you're an adult, son, but you're out of high school. And hopefully by the time you get out of high school, you got some stuff set up for the next part of your life, whether it's work, whether it's school, I don't know what it is, but hopefully by that time, once you get out of high school, like, I just don't want you sitting here looking at me trying to figure out, hey, Dad, what's next for me? I don't know, man. You ain't thought about this? Hopefully you should have a plan for your life, and it may not go the way you want it. And I've been teaching him now, what's your plan B? Because he has an A to be this athlete. And I said, so what if you don't make it to the NFL? What if you have to do the USFL? What about Canada? He was like, what is all that? I said, I want you to understand there's more than just one league. You're still a professional. Yeah, maybe you don't make it to NFL, but at least you try. And I said, what if your body gives out? Your body can't do this forever. There's nobody 60. I said, don't look at Tom Brady. That's some different stuff. But I said, you always got to have something else you want to do. He wants to open up a art school or something out here in the South Suburbs. He said, Dad, there's not a lot of stuff out here where we live in our community where kids can express their art. And I said, you can do it, son. You can do it. You put the plan together, get the finances. If you want to go to school to get a degree in business, to learn how, you can do all of that. I said, but at the end of the day, you have to decide. I said, my job as your parent is to support you. I said, right now, I give you a lot of direction, but as you get older, you'll still need me, but you may need me in a different way. Maybe you won't need a conversation. You might just say, Dad, I need you to give me a loan to start me out. Okay, if I got the money, here you go. But I'm still your parent. You're just going to need me a different way. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, I don't tell my kid what they have to. Hey, I'm just here to support you to the best of your ability. And even if you fail, because my daughter that's in college, her first semester, she said, Dad, I almost quit. Because I laughed. I said, I understand, though. You're going to have those moments in college where it's going to get rough. And she said, but you had been mad at me because I quit. I said, no. I said, last time I checked, you got the scholarship. You got the grant. You got the fine. I don't pay your tuition. You worked hard in school and did that yourself. And sometimes in life we fail. I said, I almost quit. See, why didn't you? I said, your grandmother told me just not to. Told me I had been too far. I was right at the second half of my senior year. and stuff just got bad. I said, Mom, I'm just gonna come home and work. She was like, why would you quit now? You're literally 4 months out from finishing. Just finish it. And when you come home, those same problems will be here. Figure it out. She said, but I'd rather you figure it out with your degree than without it. Because now